And so, Natho, what I'm going to lay out for everyone today is 3 scenarios. These are the 3 scenarios which I see happening. All 3 I think are possible. And then clearly I'll get to what prediction I think is going to happen tomorrow. And I'll even, in the swing states, give a margin that I think will prevail. So I'm putting reputation on the line here. This could come back to bite me, but I actually am reasonably confident that I won't be too embarrassed. So without further ado, Nath, as you can see, the Electoral College map here, 226 plays 219 with 93 toss-up points across 7 swing states. So clearly, to get to 270, Trump needs his 51, and to get to 270, Kamala needs 46. So the swing state of play, Nath, I mean, again, early voting data has Trump really comfortably ahead in these southern states. So you're looking at North Carolina is looking very, very strong, solid Trump based on early voting data. And he's also, he won it in 2016. He won it in 2020. It's hard to see a scenario in which Kamala wins North Carolina. Same with Georgia, which is obviously a border state as well, to some extent.
He lost last time, didn't he? He lost Georgia. That was
he did lose Georgia. Indeed, it was extremely close and disputed from Trump's side, but it was flipped to Biden. But I think, look, again, I think he wins it back. The 2 biggest issues for the American people are economy and border. For Georgia, I think that's highly relevant. So again, early voting data, polling data suggests Trump has a really, really strong chance of winning Georgia. And if we go across the other southern states, Arizona, I think is the most comfortable Trump win out of the 7 swing states. He's had an absolute monumental surge in Arizona. Early voting is huge. Charlie Kirk, who's a well-known conservative influencer, is leading the charge in Arizona, and he has done a fantastic job getting a lot of the youth to vote. And really drumming up support for the Trump cause there. Arizona goes to Trump this election. No doubt about that one. Nevada is a genuine toss-up. But Natho, I give Nevada, for the first scenario, I give Nevada to Trump, but I think it is going to be quite tight, or most polls have it quite tight. And then we get down to the meat, Nath. This is where the election most people think will be won and lost. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania up in the Rust Belt states. I do think Trump's best chances are Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Michigan. So scenario 1 is Harris wins Michigan, which most people think she will. However, Wisconsin, people have in the genuine toss-up category, so I'm going to give this to Kamala just to be generous. But then I think Trump, again, has Pennsylvania looking pretty good. Pretty good, not great, but pretty good.
Very controversial back in 2020.
That's right. Yeah, spot on, Nath.
One of the chief recipients of dubious mail-in ballots.
Indeed. So Pennsylvania is the biggest state, by the way. And if you look at Pennsylvania's numbers, the Democrat firewall, which is basically their lead after early voting, in 2020, I think it was somewhere just up over 1 million. They had 1 million head start prior to Election Day voting, with mail-in ballots and early in-person voting. This year, this election, they have a lead of 400,000. And they won it by 80,000 last election. So Trump has cut the early voting deficit by 600,000 and given Biden won by 80,000. That is a very significant shift. And that's a very significant indicator that Pennsylvania is absolutely in play for the Republican Party this time around. So, Natho, scenario one is let's do this. Let's give Wisconsin to Trump because I think Trump will get Wisconsin. So scenario 1 is 297 plays 241, which I think is, a very, very realistic probability. Scenario 2 in the Rust Belts is actually that the blue wall stands up and Kamala wins all 3 states, giving her 270 plays 268. Now, Natho, if Kamala wins, I just, for the life of me, can't see her winning comfortably. I see her winning 270 to 268, or as we said, Nevada is toss-up range, 276 plays 262. I cannot see Kamala extending her lead beyond that unless she pulls a rabbit out of the hat and wins maybe Georgia. But I think that is extremely unlikely. So scenario 2 is Kamala wins in a very, very tight race. But scenario 3, which is my personal prediction, and this is more upbeat and positive for the Trump faithful among the audience. Scenario 3 takes into account the polling bias against Trump in the previous 2 elections. It halves the anti-Trump polling bias, and the polls this cycle round have been, compared to last 2 elections, unbelievably positive for DJT. We're talking national popular vote lead in many reputable polls. We're talking dead heats and even Trump lead in almost all of the swing states. So there is a clear scenario, Nath, which, again, with early voting, with all of the information I've ingested, there is a clear scenario where Trump takes all 7 swing states. Now, some will be closer than others. I'll get into margins in a second, but this is a very, very likely scenario. And 312 plays 226 is where I think the race will go. This is my personal prediction. It is quite optimistic from a Trump point of view. But again, if polling data is wrong to just half the level that it has been wrong in the last 2 elections, this is the map you're looking at right here, Natho. So, yes. So there's one other scenario which I don't want to focus on too much, but if the polling data is wrong, like I've said, to a similar degree, I see New Hampshire over here becoming very much toss-up range. Currently, there's like a 4% margin on the polls. Within the margin of error, there's a scenario in which Trump wins Virginia as well. Again, if the polls are wrong to the same degree. And if it gets crazy, so 329 is possible. If it gets crazy, he wins Minnesota and maybe New Mexico, but that's probably pushing it. So if you're looking at a dream landslide win, it's something like this. It's something like 339 plays 199. He could win Maine as well, 1 vote in Maine, so 340. So anyway, Natho, I won't get into that territory, but I'm saying it is possible. But this is the map I think will prevail on election day tomorrow. What are your thoughts?
There you go, 312 to 226.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think I've made my thoughts pretty clear. I mean, if there was true elections and honest elections, it probably looked like the scenario you laid out just before changing it back to this complete landslide. But we know now that there's a very calculated effort to fraud a lot of these swing states. And one of my questions for you is, and this is a genuine question because I don't know the answer to it. When we look at some of these ones like Pennsylvania and Georgia, which were in 2020 took days to decide, they went on for multiple days, slowly counting those absentee ballots, etc., etc. Despite the 400,000 early vote lead,
yeah, that
the Kamala has, and which is seemingly much more positive than last time compared to 1 million for Biden, does what happens with what's going to happen with those absentee post election day votes that can now come in, and in those states, some of the what are they called, legislatures have already said that they'll stay open for a week if need be to ensure that they count every vote. So how does that play? Like, what's going to happen there?
Well, in short, Natho, and as you mentioned, every state is different with different laws, particularly around the counting, particularly around the absentee and mail-in ballot counting, voter ID as well, which we won't get into. It's a disgrace that voter ID is not mandatory. But yeah, so looking at a state like Pennsylvania, what will hope on election day, Nath, for the sake of America and their peace, as well as obviously for the sake of a Trump possible win, we hope that it doesn't come down to the minuscule percentage of people who voted absentee. And though, yeah, as you say, those votes take a longer time to count. What we'll be hoping for on election day is that there's a lead that's, as Trump would say, too big to rig. But what that means is it's too big for the absentee ballots and late mail-in ballots, if that's a thing in Pennsylvania, to overcome the lead that Trump has, so they can call it on the night or early into Wednesday morning US time, if that makes sense. So, yes, they are counted last in many of the states. Pennsylvania may well be one of them. But if the night goes how I think it might, I'm hoping that they can make early calls. Pennsylvania might not be possible because it's slow counting and it's a massive, massive state, but I'm hoping they can make early calls throughout the map. And if the thing is, Nath, if the trend is, say, Wisconsin gets counted quicker, I believe, than Pennsylvania, if Trump's leading Wisconsin comfortably, I think the safe assumption is that he will take Pennsylvania by a similarly comfortable margin, given Pennsylvania's to the right of Wisconsin politically at the moment. So what you can infer from the election night counting is the clear trend. You'll know very early on with North Carolina and Georgia whether Trump, is going to take those states. And if it's comfortable, you can probably assume he takes Arizona and Nevada. And then the Rust Belt will be a different trend, but, could well follow the same line. So, yeah, we'll know a lot on election night. And it's just fingers and toes crossed, again, for the sake of America's peace, that a result one way or the other is reasonably clear come Wednesday morning.